Welcome to the On Par podcast from the beautiful Winners Award Group showroom here in Coconut, Florida. I'm your host, Drew D'Alberto, and I've got my good friend that I've been trying to get on for a while now, Steve Duane.
Finally
here.
Yeah, man.
So thanks
Thank
for
you.
making the trip up from Fort Lauderdale. Not too far, I hope.
No, a quick ride.
And
It was my pleasure.
You're a golf guy. We met through the 100-hole challenge 4 years ago. I know you use it for business and networking and charity golf tournaments, and you also have kind of a unique business model, which I want to talk a little bit about too. But why don't you start us off with a golf story? How'd you get into this crazy game of ours?
Well, that's a good question. I played when I was a kid. It was, a couple times a year with my friends at the town course. And, but never taking it too seriously, never really taken any lessons or anything like that. And also I lived up north. So, after October, November, that thing would kind of shut down anyway.
We don't know about that here.
Exactly. So then I moved down here to South Florida in 2007, I think. And then, as I was down here and making some friends and kind of getting out socially, golf kind of came back up and just naturally gravitated back towards it. Having the opportunity to play a lot more frequently and consistently, and now to the point where I'm kicking myself for not playing more when I was younger, of course.
It's something that I am very passionate about because I didn't start really picking up a golf club at all till about 36. So I'm a very, very late bloomer in this sport, in this game, whatever you want to call it. And I kick myself very frequently because I've noticed that the folks that picked this game up when they were younger, let's say 12, 11, 10, 6 even,
Yep.
have a distinct advantage of the people that picked it up later in life.
They do. And it's just really, it's like a matter of the fundamentals that don't go away. They pick up a club and you can tell, as soon as somebody swings a club, you can tell, you're like, they know how to golf. Even if they're having a bad round or they're not playing well or not striking it well, you still know, you're like, okay, this person could be a good golfer if they wanted to be, just because you can see the fundamentals in the swing. So those things, establishing that early is critical to success later in life, amateur success.
Well, playing for business, you want to at least be able to get it around.
You don't want to suck.
You can suck. You got to suck quickly.
Suck quickly and be able to laugh about it.
That's exactly right. Your attitude is worth more than your aptitude in this case, in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But are you, and we talk about with Sean, who's the pro on the podcast. He's not here today. About practicing and keeping your skills sharp. And I know you're a member at a golf course and you're not far from it, but it's still a drive to get there. It's still something you got to be dedicated to. So how much are you practicing, Steve?
I would.
You're gonna say not enough. I already know.
Well, yeah, right. Typical. I would say I probably get to the range once a week, but frequency is not necessarily the driving factor behind improvement, right? It's a lot of it's really like, what are you working on when you go?
You got to be practicing.
You have to be practicing the right techniques and working on the areas of your game that, if you get to a certain point, you're going to start looking at your game and be like, okay, here's where I'm losing strokes, right? It's either, my approach or my short game, putting, driving, obviously. And then really trying to hone in and focus on those things. But I'm also lucky. I have a couple of daughters that are starting to get into golf. Obviously, I'm pushing that as best I can. So that gives me another excuse. If we have some downtime or it's on the weekend, and I'll be like, hey, let's go to the driving range. We'll go hit some balls. So that gives me, another reason to get out there and do something with them. But I would say I try once a week, and then I have a little, I forget what it's called, the putting mat with the ramp at the end. What's that?
I don't know what it's called either, but I think we all have one of those.
I have that in my office. So I try to get some strokes in if I'm on some calls or something where I can, at least it's just repetition, right? Muscle memory. And
so you say your daughters, and how old are your daughters? I know how old your daughters are, but tell the audience how old your daughters are.
Daughters are 8 and 5.
Okay.
The 5-year-old is taking to it a little more than the 8-year-old.
Okay.
But it's hard because I don't want to push it too much. I don't want to make it unenjoyable.
Sure.
But going back to what we were just talking about, I know how much they're, if they get into it, to look back and be like, oh, I'm so glad I started when I did, right? If, when I was 6 or 7 and getting into it at that age, even if not, I'm not saying to go pro, but just as
Have it as a skill
have it as a
in your
skill
business arsenal, right?
and your business arsenal, and also selfishly because they will quickly come to an age where there's less and less things that we can probably do together or have in common. So if we can go out and spend 3 or 4 hours together on the golf course,
You'll stay close.
that'll
Family
be
that plays
that'll be
together stays
it'll be a
together,
great way to
right?
spend time together. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I that hits close to home because about 3.5 years ago, when we shut down golf courses
Mm,
for a couple months or whatever it was, and then they opened back up, and my son Nick was into golf at the time. My daughter was a little too young to care, but my son was into it, and we called my dad one day, Grandpa, and said, "Hey, we want to get you out on the golf course." And I think he was about ready to murder my mom at the time or get divorced after 40 whatever years of marriage because they were stuck in
stuck
the
in the
house
house. Yeah.
together. And, it was really cool to have the three generations out. My dad's 69 now, so he was 66 at the time or 65 or whatever. And it was cool to have, 65, 38, and I guess Nick was 11 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's that kind of thing where you can play for, hopefully till they put you in the ground.
Correct.
Right?
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully.
And another aspect of it that I think was something that I didn't learn until later in life was that there's so many there's so much of a mental aspect to it, and personal development and self-improvement in playing golf, right? Because it's just you versus yourself pretty much. And being able to expose kids to that at a young age, how to handle adversity, how to have a short memory, right? And say, okay, I hit a bad shot, what's next? All right, put it behind you. How to think positively, how to focus, how to there's just so many aspects of golf that, when played correctly from a mental standpoint, translate to a lot of other areas in life. And if you can get a hold of those early in life, I think it puts you at a tremendous advantage.
Well, and I think it's even more important for our daughters than my son. You have two daughters, I have one.
Yep.
My daughter was taking first tee lessons like clockwork from Coach Sean, and
Mm-hmm.
now she just wants to play basketball because her big brother wants to play basketball, and she's kind of followed that trend.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to gently nudge her back into at least practicing because her swing, she's 8 years young, and she'll be 9 in February, and her swing actually looks pretty darn good at times.
Of
And
course.
if she practices and keeps learning the right technique and getting better, it's going to be so much easier to break into the old boys club.
Right.
Like I know a handful of ladies that either played in college or a couple of them played professionally, and they have such a much easier time of getting invited to more charity events where they can network with the guys and girls, and maybe it's 80% guys at a lot of them, but the opportunities that exist for, and maybe you'll disagree, but the opportunities that exist for females that it can at least get it around and have a good time out there in business, I think are even greater than for the guys.
I think that's true, for better or worse, just because it's traditionally more men out there, right?
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Well, golf wasn't friendly to women.
Well,
60,
I don't,
50 or 60 years ago,
and
right?
I don't even mean that from like a country club perspective, so to speak, but
Sure.
but maybe more from a business standpoint, where it's like, the guys, hey, all right, we'll go out and play a round of golf, and there's camaraderie there, and kind of it's a casual atmosphere. But I think you're right. If you get out there and you're like, oh, all of a sudden you see a woman or a young girl hit a shot, and you're like, oh wow, she can really, she got a hold of that thing, and then there's like an instant respect there. Not to say that they weren't deserving of that respect before, but just strictly looking at golf.
Hashtag cancel Steve Duane.
It's I think it's great, and it's there's so many good things about it if you can get them into it early. And like you were saying, at 36, the golf bug is a real thing. It's a real thing.
I usually tell people, like, don't start playing golf because everything else will seem less good.
Correct. I know. And it's like it's like the best addiction in the world.
Agreed.
But people
my wife may not always agree, but
yeah,
I'll agree
or my bank account. Yeah, right.
Wow.
But it's hard to explain to people who haven't had the bug what it's like, right? Because they just look at you like, oh, you're crazy, you're obsessed. And you're like,
I mean, at 35, I was that guy,
right?
Calling the golfer guys crazy.
Yeah.
And like, why would I join a golf networking group? I don't play golf, or like, what do I need that for? And I mean, my careers have always led me to why the heck didn't I play golf sooner? Which is, how what are some of your tips and tricks for guys like us and moms out there that are interested in getting their kids into golf? Like, how did you nudge your daughters into getting interested in this sport?
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to say about the bug is that for those of us that have been bitten by the bug, usually it happens on its own once you're exposed to it. So what I was going to say is,
lucky and catch one flush iron and
it's all over,
straight down the middle,
and you chase it the rest of your life. But that's kind of what my thought was. I'm like, okay, how do you can you create that bug in someone else, right? With the kids. And so with my girls, we've put them into lessons early, and I try to take them out as frequently as I can. We haven't quite gotten to the point where we're out playing rounds, but my goal is sometime in the next year where we can go out and at least play 9 holes together.
Well, I'll give you a trick that worked for Tessa and Nick, actually, is and I should be editing this out, but I'm not going to. Is let them drive the golf cart.
That
when
yes.
The range master's not looking.
Correct.
And now it's #cancel Drew. But,
the golf cart helps.
On Par podcast does not endorse letting your kids drive the golf cart. Wink, wink.
Not responsible for it. Yeah, right.
Exactly. You're the attorney here. You need to put the disclaimer, not me. But you go to a course that's, let's say, not a fancy course and not even a fancy public course, just a place where people go to knock it around, and they might look the other way on something like that. So that's confidential information that's not so confidential.
And aside from the golf, like, those are fun things you get to do with your kid, where it's like a little thing where you're like, your little secret, right?
You're creating memories.
You're creating memories. Like, you honestly can't put a price on that, as cheesy as it sounds. But I've found that trying to make a game out of it is helpful. There have been times where I'm like, okay, you got to focus. Like, you're not, and then I'm like, all right, you got to back up. Like, the more you try and really put structure on this at this stage,
you got to stop thinking.
You can't.
And that's a good advice.
And like, what are your expectations for a 6-year-old?
Swing the ball, swing the club. If you hit it and make good contact,
have fun.
You're winning.
You want the kids to associate golf with fun, and making it easy. So I try to have like little contests with them, and as they develop, then we'll incrementally increase the focus on certain things and try to, again, put some structure around it so that they're actually starting to improve when they get to a point. But really now it's just a matter of trying to get them out there and to hang out and start hopefully developing a love for the game.
So what about your own golf experience? Like, can you give us a really cool story that happened to you or that you are a part of on a golf course or a charity event?
I played a charity event a couple weeks ago where the guys behind us, one of them had a hole-in-one, and everyone went absolutely ballistic. I actually don't think in all my years I had seen somebody hit a hole-in-one live.
Okay.
And I don't have any. So that was a lot of fun to see that. A little bit of jealousy, I suppose. But we'll save that for another episode. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm lucky that while I do play a lot of golf for business, many of my close friends are also avid golfers. So I mean, anytime that we go out, it's easy, it's light. We're laughing. We're tearing each other apart. as friends do,
as nicely as we possibly can,
as best friends
as
will
not
do,
nicely
right?
as we possibly can get away with.
Right,
Sure.
just pushing them close enough to want to quit the game, but not quite quitting. So it's we have a lot of fun with it, and we're always trying to do different things and make different games, and of course it's like gambling and things, but it's great. I'm it's one of my favorite activities for sure, and that's why I'm trying to get my kids into it.
I love that. So what's your business and networking connection to golf, and how do you use that to grow your network and your business?
Well, I'm sitting here because of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Tell that story then.
So for the first tee of Broward, was it? Did you say 4 years? Was it 4 years?
Ago, yeah.
Feels like more, but
it was
4 years. We had the 100-hole charity marathon at Coral Springs Country Club.
That's right.
And it's August, and we got to get through 100 holes, and normally they will put groups together. I don't know if you choose groups or they do it randomly.
It's actually like you get a partner and you say like we'll take the cards together.
Gotcha.
We take a card, you take a card, I take a card, and we kind of go together, but we're driving to our own ball like we did.
Right.
But you didn't happen to have a partner that day. They didn't team you up with anybody.
I think the only person I knew going into it at that point was Jack Bloomfield, who was the former director of Broward First Tee.
Exactly.
And an awesome guy, also a total golf fanatic.
Podcast as well.
Has he?
Yeah, he brought his grandson on. He brought our youngest guest ever on.
That's great.
Which is kind of cool. So Jack said, hey, Drew, you can come to this one even though you already played the other course because you're the chairman.
Yep.
And then he goes, this guy, Steve Duane's a really cool guy. You should go play, however many holes you can before you got to go to work with him. And that
was it. Then we hung out, and then
I had just started playing at that time too, so I was hacking away, and you were piping them down the middle on the second round that we played together. I don't know, you knew you were gonna swing the clubs 500 times that day, so you just relaxed and swung easy, and you kept hitting it straight.
You got to pace yourself.
That's it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that really is just a great example of golf and networking together. Now, as I was quickly looking back on, the times that we've hung out, the business we've exchanged and contacts we've exchanged, and obviously becoming friends and seeing each other in a lot of different places, all from just going to swing a golf club and doing that. So
and raise money for a really good charity.
And a great cause, great cause for sure. But yeah, it's, the longer I'm in business, the clearer it becomes to me just how important, and networking, I feel like it's kind of a general term, but more like building relationships with people, and not just, hey, we're at a happy hour, here's my card, here's your card, and this sort of thing, but like trying to connect with somebody on a meaningful level.
It's 50 levels up from that.
Yeah, right.
At least. You got, here's my card, here's your card. You may never see each other again.
Probably won't.
You may lose the card.
Yeah.
You might call and they don't remember who the heck you were because they met 50 other people that night. And the building relationships aspect is clearly my favorite part. And then, I've been on events where I didn't know anything about what the person did until the 19th hole.
Really?
And then they were like, oh, by the way, while we're
here's what I
here, having a beer or having dinner or whatever, all of a sudden it's like, hey, Drew, what is it that you do?
Right.
And then it turns into, well, how can I help you? Or maybe I need this, or maybe you need this. We did it immediately because I had just had a friend say, hey, I want to play more golf and this is what I need. I might have to hire a full-time paralegal. And then I met you like a couple days later at that event we were just talking about, and I'm like texting him saying, hey, maybe you want to call this guy, he might have the fix.
And it's funny when you do that, right? When you get into those networking situations or you make connections with people like that, it's funny how often those timing things will come up where you're like, I know somebody who needs this or that, or hey, I can connect you with somebody who does this, and like, I think what you said is important too, where you're like, we didn't even get into business talk until the 19th hole.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think if you go into those situations where you're just like, here's what I do. How can you help me, right, expand my business? That's going to get you absolutely nowhere. You have to, you have to be authentic and care about what value you can bring to other people. The more value you provide other people, the more value will come back to you. You
And
know.
that's a huge testament to meeting someone at a charity event too,
Mm-hmm.
because I you already at least have some connection together, right? If you're at a cancer event like next camp,
Mm-hmm.
the gala and that's coming up in April, or like Man Up tournament
Oh,
that we
yeah.
just played, where everybody kind of has the idea of, look, we're good people, we're trying to do something good for kids with cancer
Yep.
or veterans or a faith-based charity or a
Indian
Jewish
princess.
charity or Indian princesses, where we do camping trips with our daughters and other events. And it's dads spending time with their daughters. We all have that same value of, hey, you know what, our kids are going to grow up fast, time flies by fast, I want to spend good quality time and make memories, like
And
you
be
were
around
talking about.
like-minded people like that. I think that, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when you can do events where it's not strictly based on profession, right? But where there's other things that are bonding these people together, other common threads. That's really going to help you make connections with people on a different level, right? Where you're around like-minded people and you're interested in the same things, and the more you're around people like that, the more you realize that the truly successful people are the ones that are trying to help you the most, right? Like it's funny. The people who do the best in any aspect of business are, in my experience, the ones who are not trying to help themselves, but again, they're just trying to see what they can do for other people and do it authentically, and that's why people want
Bob Berg wrote a whole series of books about it. The Go Giver, Go Giver, Sell More, and I forget the third one.
it. Mm-hmm.
But that's exactly the philosophy that he preaches in those books. Is
And it's 100% true.
you just go ahead and give, expecting nothing in return,
No
and
expectation.
you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah.
And then some.
And it's especially depending on what sort of business you're in. If you're starting business on your own, that can be a bit of a mental block to get over, because especially in the early stages, if you're going out to meet people, you want to be like, here's what I do, and like trying to get the but if you just like take a step back and again you just really focus on other people and have interest in what they're doing, and being supportive of those things, then it tends to come back to you much more quickly.
Yeah, you create a group of fans of Steve Duane that say, hey, you know what? Steve helped me when I
Yeah.
needed help, or
Or
when
was
I
just interested,
he
or
just wanted to help me.
yeah.
So, why wouldn't I want to look out for Steve when someone says, hey, I've got a bunch of legal work and I need somebody to help
Mm-hmm.
take it off my hands. So, that's a perfect lead into the Freelance Firm. So tell us about your firm and how you started it, and why you started it, because you have a kind of a cool story that you told me the first time we met.
um,
You're an attorney by trade.
yes, I'm an attorney here in Florida, and I was licensed to practice. I think it was 2014. So then I was practicing for about 3 or 4 years. I worked for a fantastic attorney in Weston, who was a solo practitioner when he hired me, but amazing guy, tons of experience. He knew every aspect of the law and the practice, but was also just a good guy. Wouldn't Not the type of person to ever cut any corners. Like as a beginning attorney, he was somebody really good to learn from an integrity and ethical standpoint and that sort of thing, aside just from the mechanics of practicing law. um, so that was a good experience, and I guess it was about 4 years into it, or maybe a little before then. I was kind of sitting at my desk, and it was again just me and the other attorney in the practice, and I had some things piling up, and I was like, wow, I'm like, this is, I got to turn all this stuff around really quickly. I'm like, I had a bigger, higher priority project that I really needed to devote my focus to, and kind of had a stack of files that were needed attention, but
Not as
they
urgent.
were not as, not as
Critical.
urgent, as critical as the other project. But I think I just saw them and I kind of thought to myself in the moment, like, man, I wish I could just like hand these off to somebody who could just temporarily help me with it, right? Like, wish I had another lawyer who, not necessarily to go hire somebody, but I could just pass this off and they could, knock these letters out or knock these pleadings out or what. Um, and quite honestly, the wheels just started spinning from there, being like, wow, I'm sure I'm not the first attorney to think that, wishing that they could just kind of pass that work off to somebody temporarily or, um, and so I, just it started to almost like the golf bug, honestly, where it just started to take hold of me, and really to start thinking about what does that look like? What would that look like as a business? What would that require? And similarly, at the same time, we found out my wife was pregnant with our second daughter, and so as I started to kind of put the pieces together, and also getting that news, I was like, well, you know what? Like if I don't pull the trigger on this and really go after it now, I'm like, there probably isn't going to be a better time to do that. Once my second kid is here, and all of a sudden it's harder to make jumps like that, as your responsibilities increase. Um, so yeah, that was I think I kind of started thinking about the concept in August or September of 2017, and then I launched the company on March 15th of 2018. So we're going on almost 6 years. But long story short, it's we're essentially a legal staffing company to an extent where we manage a network of freelance attorneys and paralegals that we make available to firms for that temporary or project-based support, some ongoing support as well. And then we also have recently expanded into some full-time recruiting for firms that come to us looking for associates or paralegals that they want to hire in-house full-time.
Got it.
So we kind of, we do a whole range of support for law firms kind of from top to bottom.
It's a very cool concept. I loved it
Thank
immediately.
You.
And obviously I've sent you some attorneys that have used your services.
Thank you again.
And sing your praises. So, Charlie Chaplin won't mind me mentioning him, and that is his real name.
Yep.
His ID. But he is actually was my partner in the 100-hole challenge the first year that I did it. And my son Nick went with us, and he wound up riding more with Charlie than he did with me. And then I met you a couple weeks later.
That's right.
So it's just kind of funny that it comes full circle. Here we are, 4.5 years later, having this conversation on the podcast.
It's very weird.
It's cool.
It's awesome. It is so cool, but it's almost surreal when you think about those things, and then you always the gift of perspective or being able to look back and see how things develop when you don't see that in the moment. Obviously, you don't know how things are gonna turn out or what's gonna happen with either work or relationships or whatever. But it's
golf will always bind us anyway, right? I mean,
it certainly will.
If you call me and say, "Hey, we're playing Fort Lauderdale Country Club on Friday," you're probably going to get a yes unless I'm otherwise committed to play golf at a different place at that point.
Well, I think we were trying to get a date locked up in the next couple of weeks, so I think we need to.
December 22nd, and I don't know if this is going to air before or after that, but that'll give us something to talk about when you come back for the next one.
We'll do a post round analysis.
We can make fun of Jonathan Cohen if you want. That's always fun.
He's another great client of mine. Nothing but great things to say about him. He's a solid golfer also.
Yeah, he's also has something else in common with you. He's been a guest on the On Par podcast.
Is that right? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I'm following in good footsteps here.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. You and Jack and Jonathan. And I once Charlie takes a break from traveling, I'll have him on here as well. But and he actually needs to come up to Winners Award Group anyway because he needs some new Kennebly Chaplin.
He needs some gear.
He needs some polo shirts.
Yeah.
So we'll get him up here again. But I'll tell you what, Steve, it's been fun. Let's close it out with letting your audience know that how they can get in touch with the Freelance Firm or send you some attorneys that might need your help.
Sure. You can check out the website at thefreelancefirm.com. Can email me directly if you know anyone that might need some help at steve@thefreelancefirm.com. Certainly happy to talk to anybody anytime about that and tell them more about what we do. And thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. This is great.
My pleasure, man.
I feel like we could do this for hours.
No, we could definitely have you back for sure, and we'll shoot another one. Right now, we're going to go eat some food, though. But, from Winners Award Group here in Coconut Creek, want to thank our audience. We'll be back next week on the On Par podcast next Thursday with another episode, and thanks for listening.